So in this video I am going to be installing DeepSeek-R1 onto my MacBook Air with 8GB of RAM. I will be using Ollama, which I will go and download, and all of the processes and all the steps are sped up so you don't have to hang around. The whole process takes about an hour, but what I'll do is I'll download Ollama, and then from within Ollama I'll be able to pull the DeepSeek-R1 language model, because the language model doesn't run its own, needs this to be able to function, and then we'll be able to do some tests with it. So I'm just doing the kind of the basic installation process. It will require a password to be installed, and it tells you about the what it's doing. So here we go, tapping in my password, and then it tells you to run your first model, do this. But actually what I'm going to do is, rather than follow that, I'm going to open up terminal and I'm going to go and seek the DeepSeek model that I'm after. So I can search that in here, and then I'll select the 1.5 billion parameters and copy the code. Simple as that. Paste the code into terminal and then press return. Now what this is doing at, I don't know, 100 times speed is it's downloading the language model. That's downloaded it so Ollama can actually then start running with it. What will happen is when this is completed, I'll get a success prompt in the terminal window, and I'll be able to start interacting with the language model. Simple as that. Here we see the steps are completing now, and here we go, we're getting writing manifest and the success. You can see the little dots dancing around in the window, and this takes a little while. For the first time it's run, it will be quicker next time you run Ollama. And here we go, we're communicating with DeepSeek-R1. It's worth pointing out that this is a distillation of the massive 600 odd billion parameter language model. You wouldn't be able to run that on consumer hardware. You'd probably need 750 to a terabyte, 750 gigs to a terabyte of video RAM. It's just not available on consumer hardware to run the full model. So you know, you can run this stuff, the distilled version, which are trained and fine-tuned smaller language models, to get a sort of a feel for what DeepSeek is capable of. Done a few kind of tests. I've asked it my typical write me 500 words, and the 1.5 billion parameter worked okay. So I'm just going to open up Activity Monitor now and get it to run in verbose mode. So when you open the language model, if you type --verbose, then it tells you how fast it's been able to do everything for you. So again, I'll go back to write in 500 words about machine learning, and it will go through the whole process. So the 1.5 billion parameter model's fast, doesn't have as much information available to it as the larger models, but this is something that you can use right away out the gate on pretty much any modern Mac. Like I say, this is an M2 with 8GB of RAM. It's got a 512GB SSD, so it's by no means the top of the line Mac available. This is a type of hardware that most people have got. So there you go, the whole thing's running under 20 seconds. That's pretty cool. So I think what I will try now is to run the 7 billion parameter version of the model. And so if I do Ollama run DeepSeek-R1 :7b, then that will pull the large language model down. It's a much bigger file. It's 4.7 gig versus the original 1.5 billion parameters. But here we go, it's pulled, and it's a lot slower. And I think this is because of the amount of RAM that this MacBook Air has got available to it, it can't serve the GPU fast enough, because the GPU's not really being tested a great deal, the CPU's not being tested a great deal. It just can't serve that data fast enough, and I think that's the point of contention. But this is all real time, this is all happening at kind of 1x. So if I open it up again in verbose mode, you'll see things are slow, and although it's doing it again, a little bit faster than last time, this is not really the speed you'd hope for from a chat bot. So I'm going to try a 500 words test, and this is going to take a little while. This is going to do some reasoning. It's going to be painfully slow, so I let this run and went away and made myself a cup of coffee, because 500 words at this pace is going to take some time to pop out. What I have done though, is in the interest of you being able to see how this works, is I've sped up the whole process, I think 2,000 times faster, 200 times faster, and yeah, it's kind of rattling through it on screen, but this is not the real time speed. So once this is completed, you can see that whole process to write 500 words took 6 minutes and 17 seconds. The quality of the output is most likely, and I've not checked the quality, is most likely superior to that of the 1.5 billion parameters. And this is where you have to decide about speed versus quality. And especially if you start trying to go for the larger language models, because this isn't large by any stretch of the imagination, I think you're just going to probably run out of memory to be able to do anything at all, and it might take a minute to generate a word, which is completely unusable. But it is a version of DeepSeek that you can run on your device, and if you don't mind waiting 6 minutes for 500 words, then this is something that you could be utilizing. So for me, this was just a healthy and interesting experiment. There are other small language models around the 2 billion parameters. So Gemma from Google is a 2 billion parameter model, so again suitable for running on an 8 gig Mac. If you want to run larger models, so these 7 billion and 14 billion parameters, then I think you're really going to need 16, 18, 24 gig to be able to get the most out of the machine and get the most out of the language model. I've done similar tests on an M3 MacBook Pro with 18 gig of RAM, so if you'd like to see that, then have a look at this video over here.